Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. So lovely of you to join. This is
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
What's
I
news?
saw
What's
it. I
going
was
on?
like, not a lot. I mean, what's there's much to do at the moment with this whole Corona thing going on.
Of
Um,
course.
but you know, we're doing what we can. I've been writing a lot while I'm at home and just sort of
Great.
exploring some new stuff.
Yep. How's that going for you?
Um, yeah, good.
Yeah.
I was looking. Last week what was I looking at? Oh, I was looking at like I don't know how to explain it, but like
Mm.
the linking like minor scales. So like I was looking at I started playing Feeling Good.
Yep.
Um and
Yep.
it's like harmonic minor over a blues scale, which I thought was really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Or a natural I don't remember. But
Or maybe
it was like
the melodic minor. Maybe.
yeah. Oh, true,
Yeah. It's all possible.
true. But I was like sort of trying to like fiddle with some of that and like see what I could do with that. But then like I saw this modes thing and I thought, it's like it's something I've sort of touched on and I know a little bit about. But then it's sort of like
Yep.
it's something I'd like to know more about because I think it'll sort of push everything a little bit more.
Cool. Awesome. Great. Yay. How exciting. How you doing, Beck?
Good.
Guys having a reunion?
Oh my god,
It's such a
I love
dorky dad or something. Well, Beck's a master at modes. She's going to be taking the class today, actually. So
yes.
take it away. No comment. She's frozen.
Present.
You ready? Are you talking about me?
She just froze right when I said that. What good timing. We'll give it another 30 seconds. Damn. Awesome. You guys can hear the ding dong, can you? Maybe.
Tamana.
Aww.
Oh.
That. She's like, oh, nah, iPad's here, not interested. And she's back.
Oh my god, am I name iPad? Hang on a minute.
Yes. I was like, who's this mystery person coming in?
Wait. I can change that, can't
Hi,
I?
Tamana.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm sorry. I'm going to be eating my toast as well while we're
Hey.
learning.
This is what we're here to do. Eat food and learn music theory.
Hell yeah.
You're in Melbourne, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Great. Yeah, some people have been logging on from Perth, and for them it's like definitely breakfast time. Some person emailed me from
I'm just
London,
hungry.
and that was strange. Oh, that's fine. And someone from London was like, "Oh, I logged on at 12 p.m. and you weren't there," and I had to ask a series of questions to eventually kind of get them to let me know that they're in a completely different time zone. And they're like, "Times are tough," and I said, "Yes, they are.
Yes.
If you want to wake up at 3 a.m. though, feel free to join."
Love that.
It was weird. Anyway, shall we make a start?
Mhm.
Yes.
I hope I haven't scared other people off by my mention of modes. Gary's coming. Awesome. So, who knows of modes? Who doesn't know? No, who knows of modes? Does
Yeah.
that? Yeah, you know that they exist in time and space. That they're a thing. Awesome. How you doing, Gary?
I'm good.
What's for
Yes.
breakfast?
Super sweaty. No, I've just done a workout, so I'm not eating, otherwise I'll vomit.
Nice. Good work. Beck, have you heard of these modes?
I feel like I have. I feel like if you start talking about it, I might know what it is, but I don't really know.
Yeah, that's accurate. All right, I'll just start talking and then you guys can let me know. Modes are... What are modes? These are modes. They're just scales. Effectively. Okay, so we already know about our C major scale and our relative minor, relative harmonic. I'll start with relative natural and melodic. Sharpening the 6 and 7 and then naturalizing it on the way back. But you can start a scale on any of these notes and end them an octave up. So within the C major scale exists about 7 other possibilities of scales. Okay? But they're going to include the same notes as the C major scale. But because you begin it on a different note, it creates slightly different sound. And just as we do with our natural minor, with the natural minor, all you do is just play the C major scale, but you start on an A and you go up to an A. Okay? That's your natural minor. So that's one of them. Okay? So each one of these. Right? Our major scale is also referred to as a mode, which we'll get to the names in a moment. This is D to D, E to E, F to F, G, our A natural minor, and B. Yeah. How does everyone feel about that so far? Any questions?
All good.
Do you understand? Yeah. Okay. All good. So conceptually, purely from a conceptual standpoint, all I'm doing is using the C major scale, but starting on a different note. Effectively, that's kind of all I'm doing. All right. There's a little bit more to it, but I'll get to that in a moment. Generally. Let me turn my notifications off. I always forget to do that. So, modes kind of predated Western harmony, and each mode has a Greek word associated with it. Look, I'll talk about this briefly. I might actually write it down so you get an understanding of how they actually look. Get rid of here. So Ionian, Dorian,
Right.
all coming back. Phrygian,
A little.
Lydian. Modes are this weird thing that people try to teach you, and then you know about it for 2 seconds, and you're like, I don't know what that means or what the relevance is, and then they never speak about it again. That's my experience anyway.
That's pretty much.
So, whereas when I was learning about them, when I was a young lad in high school, accent that is, I was like, I need to know more. Modes are much more important than what you're telling me. Who's got the truth, and why aren't you telling me this? It's a big conspiracy theory. Of course, no one told me anything. They just said they're just the things, they're notes, whatever. Get over it. Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. So scale degree 1, scale degree 2, scale degree 3, scale degree 4, scale degree 5, 6, 7. Yeah? So some are more common than others. And generally, a lot of jazz musicians or in sort of jazz culture, they've adopted these modes to make their improvisations slightly more interesting, depending on what chord they're playing at the time. But also different cultures and societies throughout time have adopted particular sounds that are inherently associated with them as a culture, and vice versa. So this is it's really worth saying. I always say this. This is very much a westernized window into learning about the potential different harmonies and different sounds of different cultures. But there's definitely a lot that's not written down. A lot of it's passed down from generation to generation. In our Western way of looking at things, the equal temper tuning, which is the piano, we see things as just 12 tones and nothing really in between, whereas in different genres and styles and cultures, there are microtones and different scales, and Mo's is just one facet of that. There's actually a whole plethora of different ways of looking at music that we are not accustomed to, generally speaking, depending on our upbringing. So, but let's chat about... So the first one we got is Ionian. And generally, in order to get the sound of a mode, the lowest note needs to be associated... The lowest note needs to be that scale degree. Okay? So if I'm playing a little improvisation, and this will be the most familiar to you, okay? The C major scale, which is also known as the Ionian mode, scale degree 1. I would make sure that there's what's called a drone occurring underneath. There's sort of like drones are apparently in like bagpipes and a few other instrument ensembles. But there has to be some form of oral context, and the lowest note that's being played by the whole ensemble is going to be this drone. Every pitch that relates to that note is going to give us a sense of give our ears a sense of what key we're in, or the relationship between the notes. The lowest note has such a strong pull to whatever's occurring elsewhere. Any questions so far? Very elaborate kind of explanation. Just chime in if you need me to explain things a bit further. But Linda. I can help it. Hey, Linda. How you doing?
Hi.
Hi, welcome.
Sorry, a bit late.
Oh, good. We're just chatting about modes. So see how you go picking stuff up. We're just talking about different scale degrees 1 to 7. First one being Ionian, which is the most common scale that you're associated that you would know, which is the major scale. So I can improvise. It's much of a muchness. It's just major scale. As soon as I change the drone note to a D, the sound will change. The feeling will change. So it's kind of like if you've... I kind of got to erase your memory for a second. So you smell perfume, you got to smell coffee to kind of neutralize it. Anyone? Yeah? Okay. I used to sell perfume for like 3 months in my life. So I'll just play some nonsense. Some light screaming. Great. So now we get Beck's like, what have I gotten myself into this morning? Alright, there's my D. Now I'm going to play a C major scale in my right hand. Still wants to be a pull to the D. I don't know if you can hear that. And now I'm still going to play mostly a C major scale. I'm going to finish on C. Yeah, do we feel that? That sort of tension that's created? Okay, so still C major scale, but the drone is really imperative, okay? I can go... Done. End of story, right? Change to the drone. And now I'm back at D, okay? So it's really interesting. Dorian's probably the most interesting one to play with because it's so discernible. It's half of a minor scale and half of a major scale. So if I look at the Dorian scale, good portion of it is the D minor scale. But in a D minor, generally have a B flat, okay? But the B flat is raised, okay? You don't have to sort of concern yourself too much with that. But instead it's a B natural, which is half of a G major scale. That's how my head looks at it. Rather than a C major, I see a bit of D minor and a bit of G major. For those playing at home, that it is just still the C major. But when I'm looking at scales like this, I see... it's sort of they're very much colours to me. So
why are you calling me out?
I can't help it. I'm sorry. You're just banging next to me. And if I was listening to myself, I'd be having that exact same reaction. Daniele, what are you talking about? Why are you saying it's one thing and then another thing at the same time? Just stop it. Silence. All right. So let's move on from Dorian. Okay, we've had enough. Oh, that's the best. I love it. And now, Phrygian. Okay, so E drone. I'll just play some nonsense. Great, beautiful. So again, a different feeling. Can you guys see that? This Phrygian scale is interesting because it's a bit of an E minor scale. E minor is this. It's got the F sharp. But in the Phrygian, that becomes a semitone, which is so characteristic of the Phrygian sound. Notice how I changed from E to F. But sort of in the subconscious, you can still hear that drone, the E drone, even though I alter between. Has much darker sound. So already we've seen that D minor and E minor have very similar minor sounding characteristics. That's mainly created by the minor third interval. Okay, so we've got the D, which I'll just play all the notes. That minor third between 1 and 3. Whenever a scale has the flattened third, that's going to create that sort of dark sound. And then the E Phrygian, still a minor third between the 1 and 3. Now we move to F Lydian, which is another one of my favorites. So. Actually, I'm going to play in a different key because it's too similar to what you've been hearing. So I'm going to play B flat Lydian. So Lydian is based on the 4th scale degree, and B flat is the 4th scale degree of F major. So I'm just going to think in F major, but my drone is going to be B flat. Or I could just do drone B flat and play an F major scale. Lydian becomes most effective when we start thinking chords. So I'll touch on that for just a second. So right now I'm playing a bit of a C major chord, which is still in the Lydian scale. But when I move between those chords, it becomes very apparent. I'm trying to think. There's a lot of Disney plays around with Lydian, and it was sort of dreamlike kind of music. Let's get my drone back. Does that make sense? Yes, there's different sound, right? Because of the sharpened 4. The sharpened 4 is super integral. The sharpened 4 being the... so I'll go back to C major for a second. And we're going to play the Lydian that's based on C major, which starts at F. fourth scale degree, if you're thinking about F major for a second, is where it starts to get a bit complex. Whereas generally F major would be. Okay? It's that open sound that creates quite a dreamlike quality. There's many different ways to play this, these kind of feelings. I'm going to keep going and then we'll come back to those. The next one is Mixolydian. Mixolydian's interesting. Generally, for those playing at home in terms of jazz context, the Mixolydian would be played over a dominant chord, which is the 5 chord of whatever key you're in. But let me play for a little bit in the Mixolydian. So here's my drone. The keys are cut off on the screen, by the way, but I'm playing a low G, a D, and a G. It's a G5 chord, okay? Yeah, quite triumphant, almost regal sound. And the flat 7 is what's characteristic of this scale. So I'm playing G Mixolydian, but if I play G major, there's my sharp 7. But I'm playing Mixolydian, which is actually based on C major, so I flatten that 7. I'm sure you've heard some kind of feeling that is in lots of different types of music. Creates tension, and then we get our release. Okay, we'll touch more on Mixolydian in just a moment. Our next one is Aeolian, which is just the natural minor. We tend not to make too much of a big deal of the Aeolian and the Ionian just because we're most familiar with the major and the natural minor anyway. And then Locrian, which is the least common and probably hardest one to navigate because of its sound. So we've got real strong dissonance between the first and second degree. That's our semitone, which is very similar to our E Phrygian, which has the semitone difference. Going back to our Phrygian for a second, we've got a perfect fifth between 1 and 5. But if I go back to my Locrian, I've got a tritone between the 1 and 5. Because the perfect fifth is the F sharp, okay? Which creates quite a dark, very unusual sound. Create quite a lot of tension using the Locrian. Cool. So there are modes. Questions? Go.
How do you implement them whilst, like, how does that associate for when you're playing a piece?
This, I guess, this is definitely going into improvisation. So, which is not going to be relevant for everyone. I guess I'm just curious and I like to share modes, but I would think for yourself, Alinta, would be super relevant. Even Joseph, as you know, you're writing music, you could definitely pull upon different modes to elicit different feelings.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, doing the beautiful game a few months ago or last year or whatever, there's definitely a lot of modes used in that music, Irish modes, or at least a lot of Dorian, which tends to be quite commonly associated with Celtic music. Lots of this. just to jump quickly to how we would associate it when we're looking at chords, I'll pull up a chart. So maybe Satin Doll. Nah, not that one. Not that one. Yak. So for this, and we're getting a little bit advanced now, but I'll touch on it for just a moment. So it's important for me, firstly, for me to understand what scales to play over particular modes. I have to understand how the chords are functioning. And most 20s, 30s, 40s jazz music or most musical theatre stuff that we are accustomed to as well, they're synonymous. They're written with functional harmony. That is to say that most chords lead somewhere, and then that chord will lead somewhere else, and eventually it may go home, So we create dissonance, tension, and then it will resolve itself. That's functional harmony. Okay, so when I see the first chords, and I'm looking at section A, it's not annotating. Great. The first chords at cigarette holder are D-7 and G7. Those two chords are 2-5 because we're in the key of C major. Okay. First chord is the D-7, which is this 2 chord, and then the next chord is the G7, which is the 5 chord. And generally speaking, we'd use those modes to improvise over those particular chords. So when I'm playing a D-7, I would be playing a D Dorian on top of it. And when I play a G7 Mixolydian, and then resolve it eventually at some point to C major. Where this gets most interesting is when we're playing quite altered dominant chords, which is to say maybe it's a G7 with a sharp 5. That's my G7 now. So then instead of playing Mixolydian, just the plain as day C major Mixolydian, and bear with me, I'm actually going to sharpen the 5. And I can sort of play it.
The 5 of, sorry, what are you sharpening the 5 of? The
G7.
G7.
So here's my G7.
So
And remember, the 5 is the G to the D, so the D is the 5.
Yeah.
And pretty much when you have dominant chords, you can alter them in many, many different ways. So in this case, I've chosen to alter the 5 note by sharpening it. That alters the scale that I'm going to play on top of. That I'll play on top of it.
Right.
This is when I go into an improvisation. So instead of going... That was just a normal G7. I'm going to go sharp 5 now. Just a slightly different sound. But what I encourage you guys to do, how you doing with that, Ulta? I just thought...
But I'm just hearing my husband go, yeah, jazz, yelling out in the background.
We're just like... Just a little step into that pond. Just a cheeky little step, but we're going to... That's when it becomes most interesting. And then you sharp 4.
This is all relating back to C, though, isn't it? Because C
Correct.
is in the key of C. So
We're in the key of C.
So, okay. So because you've got the D-7 and then the G7, do you go, okay, on the D, that's Dorian.
Yep.
And on the G, that's Mixolydian.
Correct.
So on those chords, you play those modes.
Yep.
So you change every chord.
Yes.
Okay, slowly getting it.
Tick, 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 tick. And of course, the challenge there is once you start to implement it is going, how do I not sound like, like I'm just sort of bashing through. But that's the learning technique, Now, when I was learning this, I was like, well, I'm just going to generally think in C major anyway, because the bass note, the lowest note, is going to alter the sound of that scale quite easily. Okay, so the bass is bass. Sorry, I just had a stroke. The bass is going to play a D, right? If I play C major, it's already going to create that sound inherently. But I still need to think in those colors rather than just in C major. But my main point being is that it gets most interesting when I alter the dominant chord. That's when it gets really interesting, because then I can alter the Mixolydian scale just by a fraction. So as I said to you before, we had the sharp 5. I'm going to alter that scale. I won't play a D natural in my scale. I could if I want to, but for theoretical purposes, I won't. That actually sounds kind of nice. But that's actually going into a minor.
So how did you know to do that? Like,
which bit?
Alter the fifth, the dominant. Like, how do you?
Mostly, it's personal preference. So when I say that, the idea is a dominant chord is to create an intense amount of tension in the harmony. If I play just a pure dominant chord, the way that it stands, it's creating a moderate amount of tension. But through experience and through your own just aesthetic style, you can actually alter a few of those notes. And we'll get into this probably in a slightly more intermediate class, I reckon. But generally, we wouldn't alter the third. If I alter the third, it doesn't become a dominant anymore. It becomes a different chord. Therefore, I've lost it. So, and I generally wouldn't alter the root.
That's from minor to, it's
correct.
Just minor and major.
And minor chords are not dominant
changes.
chords. Dominant chords are inherently major in quality and in traits. I wouldn't change the 7th. If I change the 7th, it no longer is a dominant chord.
Yeah.
Okay? It needs to be a flat 7. It's really important. So right now, my general rule of thumb is that I will not change my 3rd and I will not change my flat 7. Okay? They're called the bones. Okay? They're a tritone and they have an inherent pull to our C major. So they're quite important in creating the dominant sound. That being said, and I'll just leave you guys with this, I can alter the 5. I'm allowed to. Okay? Because the 5 in the harmonic series, a G in itself includes a D within there. So I'll just leave that there for a second. So I'm going to alter the 5. I'm going to raise that by a semitone. Great, cool. I've already altered it by a fraction. I also can add a 9. I can also sharpen the 9. I can add a 13. And I could, which is a bit naughty, but I could flatten the 13, but then it becomes a sharp 5, so I probably won't do that.
How do your fingers even reach that?
Sorry?
How do your fingers reach those?
I've got 2 hands. I've got 2 hands.
I was like, what? That's crazy.
Wild. No.
I want your hands.
I'm playing them with both hands.
Can you alter the 1?
Generally not.
Or is that what you did? No.
1 is really important in creating the stability of the chord. If I alter the 1, it becomes a different chord. That being said, I can keep the 1 and instead flatten the 9. And now I've got a dissonance between the 1, but I'm still maintaining the 1. With that sharp 5, now my scale is going to be a bit different. Okay, so I've altered the chord so much that I need to alter the Mixolydian. At that point, I'm thinking in shapes anyway, so I'm actually thinking... That's a discussion for another day, I reckon. And eventually, you can do some really wild stuff. The main take home being that the dominant chord can be altered in quite a wild way, and that's where we can have the most fun.
Oh. Does Bernstein do that a lot?
Does what? Who?
Bernstein?
Yes. 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 Go for it, Tamara.
I missed what you said. So you don't change the third in a chord because then that changes between major to minor. And what did you say about the seventh? The flat seventh?
Yeah. So we maintain the 3 and the flat 7. Notice how I'm referring to it as a flat 7, but I'm not. It doesn't mean I'm altering it. The flat 7 is relative to its parallel major. So this is my G7, but in G major, it's just a normal 7. But in a G7 dominant chord, it's a flat 7. Okay. So it's a minor 7 interval between the root note and the 7th. So it sounds. Oh yeah, okay.
Oh, so you're saying like in a G7 chord, you don't alter the flat 7.
Correct.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just want to make sure it's apparent.
And then in a normal major 7.
You go.
Just like I don't know. I'm just like a little bit confused with the 7th. So yeah, something.
Yeah. No, that's right. We've touched on it. It's a constant topic that we'll keep touching on because it is a confusing sentiment. But the main take home there is that a dominant chord has a minor 7th interval between the 1 and the 7.
Okay,
and a minor 7 interval is one semitone down from the major 7 interval, which in a G major is an F sharp.
Okay.
But
cool.
and just to reiterate, what we want to do is keep the third and keep that flattened 7. We don't want to. We kind of tend not to want to mess with it. We start messing with that, the chord just becomes different, and that's cool too. But it's just about being aware of the rules. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Would you mind just quickly going over what a dominant chord is then?
Yeah, sure. In how to create one?
Yeah, just like a very basic, like 135, not like that.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, I mean, firstly, that part 1 is correct. So 135. Yep. And there's so many different ways of looking at it, but I always go to the major 7 first. So I go G. Okay, cool. What's a G major 7 in the key of G? That's F sharp. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then I flatten it, and that's your dominant chord.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. A dominant chord is a category of chord, by the way. It's when we're talking about functional harmony, when I talk about dominant chords, I'm generally referring to the 5 chord, and a 5 generally pulls to the 1. So the chord that we see after that is generally, not always, going to be a 1 chord. Not always, though. Definitely not always. But a dominant chord can sometimes refer to a diminished chord. It's talking about how it's functioning. Yeah. So if it's functioning to pull us back home, then it will be a dominant chord. If we are home, it's a tonic chord. A tonic chord doesn't always have to be a 1, okay, but generally is a 1. And last but not least, a subdominant chord is going to be something that bridges us from the 1 to the 5. So generally speaking, it's going to be a 4 or a 2. This is a sequence. So it constantly cycles between tonic, subdominant, dominant, tonic, subdominant, dominant. A good song will elongate the subdominant and elongate the dominant so as to not give you any sense of resolution. And just to wrap up with this, our biggest example with Satin Doll, for example, is it starts with 2, subdominant, 5, and then back to 2. Doesn't give you that resolve. And then it uses a 2-5 in a different key. Again, no resolution. It goes to a dominant chord here. Tritone sub, which we'll touch on one day. Yeah? resolution.
So how did you know it changed key? Because E minor is not in D minor.
Yeah, that's just my experience. It's eventually with practice and with continued learning, we can identify that E minor and A7. Correct is because it's not in the key. That's absolutely. But with experience, I can understand that an E minor 7 to an A7 is a 2/5 in some form of a relationship, but it's actually 2/5 in a different key. And then it gives you a false sense of resolution by going to the D7, which is E minor and A7 is in the key of D major. But it's going to a D7, not a D major. So it's actually giving you a false sense of resolution by going to the dominant chord and not the tonic.
The dominant chord of the D or the dominant chord of the... Yeah.
The parallel dominant. We're going into a dark going down a dark alley right now. But I want to talk more about this for sure. And we will. This is just the beginning. So friends, I'll leave you with that. Give it some pondering and see if you can just jump around the piano and... jump around. Just keep jumping around that piano. And just learn by looking at it. It works for me every time. No, see if you can just hit some drone notes. You know, Dorian and Lydian are going to be your best one to actually go, oh, okay, I can hear it. Hit a low D and just improvise over C major. You could honestly just play C major as quavers and you'd still get something going. Okay? If you play the drone with a 1-5-1, like a power chord, you'll get a better sort of receptiveness of the sound. It's just stronger. Okay? All right, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
Thanks, Daniele.
All right, good work, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Got super brainless today. I'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.